Hey guys, thanks for joining me today. My name is Jordan Alatorre, and this is my Frankenstein of a drift build. It's a 1987 Toyota pickup, otherwise known as ScrapeLux. I'm joining you here in the beautiful city of Long Beach, which currently it's not sunny. It's actually raining. Pretty much a rare sight because it doesn't rain here much. Those of you that have joined me from the very beginning of this build, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. And for those of you that are new here, welcome. So this started off as a very stock vehicle. I picked it up for about $1,000 in the city of Orange County. And my plans back then were just to make it slammed, poked, and basically obnoxiously loud with a straight pipe 22R. It was not fuel injected, it was actually carbureted. So when I first bought this truck, I really didn't know much. I was working as a lube tech for Toyota, and at that point, I really didn't have much knowledge of what could be modified and what could be adapted. I didn't have that mind that I currently have now of if it doesn't fit, make it fit. So at that age, the only thing I could do was reach out to two of my idols that were in the truck scene, which were SD Yoda and Troy Yoda 808. They helped me make this as slammed as possible with minimal work, such as loosening the torsion keys, and I removed my front bump stops, and I also flipped my ball joints to give me just that extra inch. And the rear end, I put 4-inch steel DJM suspension blocks, which I was pretty slammed. I ended up rolling my fenders out about, in the front, I could say about 6 inches, and the rear, I flared the bed about 5 inches. And I was rocking black Krager V5s 15 by 10 -44 with a 195/50 tire, which was a pretty good stretch. It was good enough to slide around and not debead as long as you kept the pressure good. ScrapeLux is a streetable, cruisable, and driftable little truck. It utilizes 7 to 9 different vehicle makes, which some are Toyota, Lexus, Nissan, Infiniti, Ford, Chevy, and I can't really think of any other one on the top of my head, but there are plenty of things to go by as far as showing you guys what I've done to the truck. So you guys will probably pinpoint what I'm talking about. One of them is Volvo. That's another one that I just remembered. But I decided to design this truck as far as creating something unique, something dramatic, overbuilt, cruisable, driftable, but in general, just be able to go slide and go to any auto parts store to pick up a part. So as far as parts wise, I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys a little tour of ScrapeLux. So we're basically gonna start off with the outside, then we're gonna move into the engine bay, into the cab, and then the rear end. So my hood is a stock hood, but I created my own vents utilizing a steel sheet that I found at Home Depot. All I did was measure, cut, and include how many vents I wanted in it. So after doing that, I ended up painting them with a color called Galaxy from Rust-Oleum, but unfortunately it is discontinued. And I put them on utilizing 3M double-sided tape with adhesive promoter, which really sticks them on. The hood latches are from a company called Aerocatch. I bought the flush style mount, and I am using their steel rod rather than aluminum. Front corner lights and front bumper lights, they are from eBay, but they come from the Philippines. They are a little laggy when it comes down to shipping, but when they do come, they are a great addition to your truck to make them nice, simple, and clean. My front headlights are Dapper Lighting 6x7 projector style headlights. They come in chrome and in black housing. They do also come with a small indicator light at the very bottom. It's your choice whether or not you want to use them. For me, I decide not to. It's just a cleaner look in my standpoint. And they shoot a really great beam, and you get to see everything at night, even with the black housing. My front grille and my valance are both from a 1987 Toyota 4Runner 4x4. The bumper that it has on is actually stock. It was purchased like this. I never changed it. And when I talked to the guy, he did say it was a stock bumper. So I'm pretty sure you guys could find either a painted silver one that looks exactly like this, or you guys could find a chrome one or a blacked out one. My front fenders are stock. They're just pulled out about 5 to 6 inches from stock due to fitment reasons, and I wouldn't have it any other way. My side splitters are from a 2003 Nissan 350Z, and they are shortened to fit, and you will be cutting about, I would say, 3 inches off the front, and you are also going to have to do a diagonal cut just for wheel turning purposes. But it's a great addition to your little truck. They are extended to a good amount to match with a wide fitment, and they look great. My rear flares are from eBay, but they come from a great company called Lemon Hill Avenue. They make a wide variety of different sizes. They have 4 different designs, all handmade, and they're just a great product to have on your vehicle if you're trying to go for a metal style look rather than the plastic flares. The only difference is I drilled my own holes so I could tack weld them onto the body rather than just welding them from the outside, just to have a clean, slicker look. My rear tail lights I actually made myself. I had a video up showing the process of making them, but my old YouTube was hacked and deleted, as well as my Instagram. So this is another reason why I'm creating this video. But my rear tail lights were designed and created by myself. I used 2 sets of tail lights. I used the stock ones, and then I used the other clear ones that a lot of people will call them Mexican lights or Alteza lights. They are basically clear lens with red chrome on the inside. And all I did was take the clear lens off of that and put them onto the stock one, which gives you this look. But I also painted the inside with LED lighting. So it gives it another great look to this truck that's unique. Not many people know about it. Not a lot of people will attempt to do it, but it's a great thing to do if you're trying to be unique and different. My rear diffuser, I did design and make myself here at home. I used a material called ACM. So it's basically aluminum sheets on the outside and styrofoam in the middle. It's a great product to design and make your own aero with. That's also the same material that my side splitters are made out of. So my rear tonneau cover is from a company called Checkmate. They were, I believe, from the early 80s to the late 90s. They are no longer in business. But to what I know is that this is a Chevy S10 tonneau cover. It doesn't fit great. It does has its imperfections, but it works great for this little truck. It might not fit perfect, but when it comes down for videos or as far as covering my whole rear end, it does its job. If you're looking for great wind deflectors, the ones that I'm using are from a company called AVS. They make a great product, and it does its job when it's raining, especially because I don't have any windshield wipers. I could lower it, get some breeze, and I don't get any rain on the inside. Wheels, I am actually utilizing Vision 521 15x10 -25 with a 20mm spacer in the front, just so I could gain that fitment that I want. And in the rear, I am using 15x10 plus 25 because of my rear end of my choice. It is not a stock rear end, and we're about to go over that once we get to the rear end. Opening the hood, we could see that nothing is stock in here. Starting off, we're going with the engine, and it's a 3 SGE beams. These come naturally aspirated in a Toyota Alteza, which is from Japan. We are using performance injection injectors, which are 1000cc rated for E85 and normal octane usage. We have a weld speed beams intake manifold with a shaftless AT powered throttle body. We're using a custom homemade log style manifold that has a Garrett GT30 71R turbo attached to it. A couple more modifications we've done to this motor is we're using a excessive manufacturing 2JZ alternator bracket. I am using a stock JZ alternator, but I did get it rebuilt to 150 amp output. It's a great feeling knowing that all your electronics are running at full speed with no withholdings of its power. For its oil system, I did modify it. I did delete the original oil cooler, and I installed a external oil cooler with a Mishimoto oil thermostat, which helps it control the oil temperature. It's a great addition, especially for turbo systems. If you don't have one, it's a possibility that your oil will be too cold and it'll start foaming up, which is something you do not want in your oil system. To break down our IATs, we're using a ISR Nissan 240 S13 intercooler, and it's a great addition for boosted cars because it is a big unit. I did cut out a lot of the radiator support, but I did reinforce the whole front end, so it didn't lose any structure. I did have a JDM Sport intercooler, which it really didn't do much. It maybe brought down 1 or 2 degrees. This one actually brings it down more in the 10s and 20s. So it's a big upgrade and I highly recommend it. You guys can see that I'm not using a brake booster. That's because I love more of a controlled feel when it comes down for manual braking. So here we're utilizing a Lexus IS300 brake booster delete from Chase Base. And next to it, we're using a stock factory Toyota pickup clutch master. Before I go further into this, one thing I did forget to mention is that I am using a lightweight flywheel and a twin disc setup from Clutch Masters 725, I believe. And I am using a stock beamed transmission. So on these transmissions and engine combo, you could actually use the Toyota pickup clutch, and you could use the Clutch Master and the Clutch Slave. The only thing you can't use from the truck, you have to use the beams flywheel, the beams pilot bearing, and the beams throwout bearing. Onto the steering system, I am utilizing a StatFab rack and pinion kit. It helps you utilize a 1976 Mustang II rack and pinion, which you could use power assisted or manual. In my system, I have a power assisted rack, which is being helped by a 2012 Volvo S40 electric hydraulic power steering pump that's located inside the bed, which means on a flick of a switch, I have power steering. I don't need the engine running. As long as you have power running through your chassis, that's all you need. Onto my suspension setup, I am utilizing 1992 Toyota pickup lower control arms and ball joints, only because they're stronger, beefier, and it's a less chance of me tacoing them at the track. So with that said, I highly recommend you do that conversion. For spindles, I'm using Beltec 2-inch drop spindles, and they are modified and shortened, so it could give me a lot more angle. My upper control arms are from SAE Speed. This is a company that I try not to mention much, but due to the circumstances of it being under new ownership, I'm okay with me spreading the awareness of this company. But if you guys are in the market for great upper control arms that give you tons of adjustment, I highly recommend you guys check out StatFab products. Front suspension was actually helped by a buddy of mine. His name is Tommy, and we created our own brackets and made our own mounts for these coilovers. But if you guys are in the market for a bolt-on coilover system, once again, I highly recommend you guys check out StatFab. He has amazing products for these trucks. All right, onto the braking system. So for the front, we're actually utilizing a fully restored front caliper system off of this truck. So they are stock calipers, but I am using R1 Concept drilled and slotted front rotors with metallic pads. Once they get heated up, they grab, and brake dust, there's not that much. So it's a great addition towards a cruiser and a drifter. For the rear, I'm using a 1993 Nissan 300ZX Turbo dual caliper setup with, once again, R1 Concept drilled and slotted rotors with metallic pads for normal braking and for the hydro. Let's move on into the inside of the truck. So first thing we could see is that it's not a stock dash. This is actually off of a 1992 Toyota pickup. I use what they call dash cap. A dash cap is basically a cap that you would put on top of a normal dash to hide the cracks, the nicks, the sun damage. So it's just the outer shell. And I use the material ACM to make a flat piece of panel that will cover up the hole. In the far left, we could see that I utilize a fuel gauge. This fuel gauge is actually from Glow Shift. It's a 7 RGB color tinted gauge, which means there are 7 different colors you could put, and there's a switch in the back that you could actually select your own reading off of what fuel sending unit your vehicle carries. Next gauge is a Link Aim Strata 5-inch street dash. This dash could only be connected to a Link ECU. The ECU that I am using for this build is a Link Monsoon G4X. It's the lowest model of their ECUs, but it has every type of connector usable for this engine. Link ECU not only controls my engine, but it also detects my fuel system because it has a flex fuel sensor which senses if it's E85 or pump gas. Not only that, it also has a lambda which detects air fuel ratio. My harness was actually created by a shop called My Wire Shop. You could check them out on Instagram. If you move on over to the right side of the dash, you can see that I have a switch panel. This switch panel is from a brand called Boss Switch. It's a standalone switch panel. What this means is that you could actually control how the button works, whether it's a on and off switch or a momentary switch, or you could do a steady flash or a hyper flash. So I actually use this for my fuel pump, my starter, my turn signals, my electric hydraulic power steering pump, my radiator fan, my power steering fan. All of this is being controlled by the switch panel. So I highly recommend it. And there's a box hidden that's right behind the dash that has fuses and relays that you could get at a local auto parts store. And it's perfect for the bang of the buck. So highly recommend this if you guys want a nice looking sleek standalone switch panel. All right, on to bucket seats. So I currently only have one bucket seat, which is the driver's. My passenger is actually sitting in my room right now, only because I have a drift simulator and I utilize that seat to hold me while I'm driving. These are NRG bucket seats sitting on NRG bucket brackets. And to mount them, there are Cabrol seat mount brackets. These are vehicle specific mounts. So you could go onto Cabrol website and look at your year, make, and model, and there should be brackets for your vehicle. And I will be getting rid of these only because I want to sit lower. So I'll be utilizing my own brackets. For seat harnesses, I use Race Equip harnesses. They are the blacked out ones. But I will be getting rid of these also in the future because thanks to my homie Shane, I found out they have complete all black ones and I kind of like the blackout look. These do have a little bit of chrome. So that being said, I would rather have the black ones. So these harnesses are actually being tied down onto a custom welded harness bar that was fabricated and welded in by a buddy of mine, Jose, which owns Fine Spec Motorsports. I'll put his Instagram down below and you guys could check him out. Hydraulic e-brake. This is off of GK Tech. This is a reverse style mounted hydraulic e-brake, and the reason behind this is because a normal hydraulic e-brake, the master is pointing at you. And in my setup, I did have one before, which was hitting my bucket seats, but every time I would try to move my bucket seat or anything like that, the hydro would be in the way. Even removing the seat, the hydro would be in the way. So I decided to go reverse mounted. So not only can I move my seat or take it out, I also have the ability of having a fire extinguisher mounted in between both seats. So in case of a fire, I have that safety equipment. How I said before, I am running a dual caliper setup. So this hydraulic e-brake is a standalone. This only controls one set of calipers that's in the rear, and my normal braking system controls the other caliper. So one does not interfere with the other one. Other thing I have in the inside of this cab is I have a windshield wiper reservoir that I utilize to cool down my intercooler to bring down the IATs even lower. I have spray nozzles in the front of the grill, well, not necessarily in front of the grill, but inside of the grill pointing towards the intercooler, which you don't actually see. So that's another thing I love. If you guys remember the early 90s, the early 2000s, the scene where everybody had a 5-panel weak mirror off of the golf carts, you guessed it, that's what I have exactly in this build. So the reason behind it is because I was inspired by the 90s Hondas, the early 2000 Hondas, and to be honest, it was an amazing investment because you see everything around you, including your blind spots. And it was cheap. It was a cheap upgrade, and because of this, I don't think I would ever go back to a traditional mirror. If you guessed that the little box sitting on top of my dash is a GPS signal receiver, you are correct. That's actually connected to my head unit. Right behind the wing mirror, I created and fabricated my own steering wheel hanger. Because I have a NRG quick release and race hub, it's really hard to get in and out of these bucket seats. So usually when I would take off my steering wheel, I didn't have anywhere to place it besides on top of my fire extinguisher. And I wasn't too happy leaving my suede steering wheel there. So I decided to just hang it in the mirror like a traditional race car. And this being a cruiser drifter daily driven vehicle, I decided to, sure, let's not make it a race vehicle inspired interior as well. So I decided to go with the hanger. There are many reasons why I chose this head unit that I have. One including is because I needed a head unit. Two, it's an Android system. And three, it comes with a free included GPS signal. Number two was because it's Android. The reason I say that is because I really know Android systems very well, to where I could download pre-activated or fully cracked Android files or applications. Meaning I could download a Pandora One system where you could download songs directly into your console or have unlimited skips. I know how to do all that. So that was a given. As far as sound systems go, it wasn't really worth it because I have two 6x9s that I bought off of Amazon. It was like 30 bucks. And I could have my head unit up to max volume. And even with the windows down, I could barely hear my music. So for sure, once I rebuild this, when I redo the whole electrical system, I'm definitely going to get better upgraded speakers and most likely an amplifier for them so I could actually hear my music even while drifting. One final thing I can say about this chassis is that I did create the chassis body harness all by myself. It is a full custom harness that I basically designed for it to handle the power needs, but on top of that to be tucked away and labeled, and it utilizes dish connectors. So not only does it look good where you could see the harness, it's loomed properly, but the wiring connectors that I utilize are waterproof and they're mil-spec wiring certified. So it's a great product to use. And if you're basically attempting to do your own wire harnesses, I highly recommend you try out dish connectors. It's a self-explanatory connector and it's really easy to remove, install, and diagnose. All right, on to the last part of this tour. So the rear end. You can see that I mentioned that this is a Toyota pickup, but it really isn't a pickup anymore. The whole floor of the bed is cut out. The reason being is because of this big elephant that I have here. This is a 1989 Nissan 240SX S13 rear subframe with an S13 R200 rear end, or the diff. This is used with Infinity J30 axle stubs, axles, and the Nissan 5-lug conversion hubs. I'm using solid subframe bushings and I'm using the stock S13 sway bar, but with upgraded bushings on the sway bar linkages. For those of you wondering what dry shaft I'm using, this is a full custom built dry shaft. It's a 3-inch aluminum dry shaft, but it's using a 1310 S13 rear flange and a Toyota W58 front yoke. For rear arms on this subframe, I'm using Voodoo titanium arms, all upper, lowers, and caster. If you're wondering what type of suspension I have, these are eBay coilovers. They have a 300-pound spring rate, and kind of recommend you would go with QA1 or any other coilover. I would not recommend these. They are good for my application, but as far as like a true coilover, get something better than this. But this was inspired by Animal Auto. It's a great looking truck and I highly recommend you guys check them out. Amazing fabrication, and this truck is just perfect. Onto my fuel system. So I'm utilizing a 12-gallon JEGS fuel cell, and the gas is being pumped out by a Dishworks 350 inline fuel pump. My fuel pressure is being controlled by a Hyperfuels fuel pressure regulator that's sitting up front right next to my fuel rail. Up front, I have the performance injection injectors that are 1000cc E85 and pump gas rated. At the very front, right next to the cab, you can see that I have a oil cooler, and that oil cooler is for my Volvo power steering pump that's sitting right next to it. And that right there is the Volvo electric hydraulic power steering pump. And once again, you can have power steering even with the motor off. All you need is power running through the chassis, press of a button, and you automatically have power steering. All right, so now that we're done talking about the truck, let's talk about the inspiration of why I built and did certain things on this truck. Coilover systems, the real inspiration was basically cars. Because as far as trucks go, there's no real coilover system out there that would lower your truck. It's all pre-runner stuff. And basically, inspiration came from the JDM scene, KDM scene, the Euro scene. Because as soon as somebody got a car and they want to lower it, the first thing they would do is get coilovers. Well, guess what? Mini truck scene, all we have is the old school way, which was torsions, or you would get drop spindles, drop arms, or blocks, monoleaf, air suspension. You wouldn't hear coilovers. So basically, the inspiration was cars. So that was my inspiration in general for having coilovers. My inspiration to have coilovers in the rear came from Animal Auto when I saw his cantilever suspension. But on top of that, I had a crew member back when I had my own club. His name was Quinn, and he had a cantilever suspension on his Toyota pickup with a MK3 Super we're in, which is amazing. I really hope he would post more, but if you guys have the chance to scroll through his feed, highly recommend you check it out because the fabrication on that is immaculate. So for those of you that want to get coilovers in the scene right now, you could hit up StatFab, and he has coilover systems. They're all bolt-on. All you would have to do is get your Viking or your QA1 coilovers, throw them in, remove your torsion and your torsion keys. Bam, you have coilovers in the front. Going onto the power steering system. So the reason I wanted power steering was because I used to have an 85X cab, and going from power steering to non-power steering, it was just my preference on having power steering. And when Jake from StatFab came out with the rack and pinion kit, I was like, dude, come on, like I want to try this. So I was grateful that StatFab let me and several others be the first ones to test out the system, especially at the time that I was going to the track with no power steering. And then when the kit came out, I went for my third and final time with a rack and pinion. Dude, it's mind blowing because not only did I do the power steering system, I did the coilover system, so it handled like a brand new car. So going off to the rack and pinion system, it's like it was a mind blowing game changer, especially in the mini truck scene where it's a bolt on. It's no longer a custom fabrication because StatFab offers this kit. You could either have a manual kit or you could have a power steering kit. It's all up to your preference. My preference was power steering, so that's what I went with. But it amazes me how good this handles when you have a good hydraulic system behind it. Because I utilize a 2012 Volvo S40 power steering pump. It's a electric hydraulic pump, but even though it's being controlled at 70 psi or 70% duty cycle, it still puts out about 17 through 1800 psi of pressure, and it's more than enough for this rack and pinion. And at 100% duty cycle, you're talking about close to 2100 psi, which is more than enough. But the thing is that even at 70% without the CAN bus system, dude, it's like it handles well on the track. It handles well during normal steering on city cruising, highway cruising. Like it's perfect. So for me, it was great to have, especially that I don't need my engine running. So let's say I take the motor out, but I still, let's say it's heavy, right? Let's say it's not in this truck. We could have it on any other heavy vehicle. Let's say a LS400, no motor. Yeah, it's gonna be lightweight in the front. You'll have better steering control. But guess what? If you're to turn the ignition on, no motor, but you have that power steering pressure still there, it handles. So my inspiration of towards having an electric hydraulic pump was actually from two people. One, Hurt from Hoonigan, because he has a MR2 power steering pump in his, which is also electric hydraulic. But my Volvo electric hydraulic came by Taylor Ray on YouTube because he put this same pump on his LS powered Miata that he uses for drifting. And I mean, going from two great people in the scene and having that in their vehicle that they just adapted, I was like, dude, why can't I do the same thing? So I went ahead, figured out what I needed, and I bought AN lines to convert everything to AN, including the rack. And all I had to do was get a custom power steering line that was both 6AN for feed and return, and done deal. And then on top of that, I have a D-rail oil cooler sitting in the back with a fan, so even if I were to go drifting or sitting in traffic, I could toggle that on and off switch and it'll cool down my power steering. So my whole power steering system, I feel like it's out of this world. Yeah, there's going to be greater things out there, but for me, it was just a big improvement having electric hydraulic power steering pump and a staff fab kit that allows me to have a rack and pinion that I also modified to push the rack forward another half inch just to give me a better self steering with the caster adjustment to the wheels. So my inspiration towards a wide stance was always the 240 scene. How you guys always had the 40 mil, 45 mil, 50 mil wide body fenders, and I always thought it was cool. So I decided to pull out my front fenders as far as I could. Same with the bed, but the bed was just so much that I ended up finding this company called Lemon Hill Avenue, and they created metal flares. So it allowed me to extend my body even more than what I was capable of pulling. So that's where my inspiration of doing a wide body or pulling the fenders and adding flares came from. So going towards the fitment look, I was inspired by this group of people in Japan that you could say it's the Shakotan culture, where they would be totally slammed, static, no F's given. And I've always loved that look. And at the beginning, when I didn't have the horsepower, that was my aim. And I did achieve it. I was slammed. I did get a was a $350 ticket for throwing sparks in front of a CHP in the city of LA. So it was a wild experience, but as soon as I did my engine swap and I started going towards the performance side, I did realize I was a little too slammed for what my goals were with the truck. So I ended up raising up the truck, getting more of a usable fitment. But I mean, I learned a lot throughout my process, but now it's more of a drift build. And after listening and looking into the interviews that they had with what's his name, Ryan Lateral, where he was the hot boy stance drift car, but as he slowly progressed and started learning more about drift fitment, he started raising his car higher and higher and higher to the fitment that he currently has now. So one person doesn't learn everything all at once. You will go into stages. So for me, it was that stage of, okay, I'm going to performance, so now I got to raise up my car, or in this standpoint, my truck. All right, so my inspiration towards clear lighting. So that actually came from the Euro scene, where I went to Woost, Vegas, and I started seeing all the Volkswagen, mostly the Jettas, where they had clear everything, and that really stood out to me. And once I found these on eBay, I was like, dude, I gotta have them. But then I couldn't find any for this specific year for clear taillights. So I was like, I really like the Alteza taillights that they make on eBay. A lot of people will call them the Paisa taillights. So one day I saw them at a swap meet. I'm like, dude, this is just a clear lens. Like, can I do something with this? So one day I saw them on the eBay Philippines website. They were going for like 50, $55. So I'm like, you know what? I gotta try it. So I ordered them. I'm like, can I take them apart? At that point, I didn't know what I was doing. So I ended up just prying them off. They were pretty damn glued on there. And I couldn't take them apart until I finally did, but I did crack a few pieces. And I put them on the stock tail lights. I'm like, dude, did I just do something here? Like, for me, I never seen anybody else do it. I'm pretty sure there has been other people that have done it, but I've never seen it. But I was like, holy shit, like, I just did something here. So what I ended up doing was painting the original tail lights on the inside with that Galaxy paint and put two and two together, and I made something. But at this point, I was like, I took it to a shop. That was back before I did any fabrication, so I just left it in the shop. And while it was at the shop, my tail lights got cracked. So I'm like, when I brought it back, I was like, you know what? I'm about to try these again. So I ordered another set, but this time I used a heat gun. Lens came right out, zero problems, no cracks, no nothing. So I bought another set of aftermarket tail lights, put them together, mint. So the Eurocene was my inspiration towards everything being clear. So let's talk about my side splitters. So first off, I did have a pair of NK3 Jetta side skirts. They fit perfectly. They matched to length. It was beautiful, but it was a rainy day. It was, I think, one of the worst in California. And I went into a deep puddle and my side skirt just floated away. I didn't realize until the next day, I believe, or a couple days later when I was walking towards my truck from the passenger side. And I'm like, when did this happen? And it was a couple days after it stopped raining. And for some odd reason, I never looked at my truck from the passenger side until that day. So that's when I realized it. But I wanted something again, but I didn't like the fact that the fiberglass and the side skirts kept on cracking. So I was like, can I create my own side skirts, or is there anything that I can use? I couldn't really think of anything. And then my my best friend that has a 2003 Nissan 350Z, he bought a pair of side splitters, the same ones that I have out now, and they got delivered to my house. And I was like, dude, I think these are the same size as my truck. Like, I want to try them on before you put them on your car. So I grabbed some bricks, I put them up against the truck, and I'm like, holy shit, like, this works. All I had to do is just cut it to length and diagonal cut it just for the wheel, and dude, that's it. So he bought me my first set as a birthday present, but when I cut my whole rear end to do the tuber end, I ended up just demolishing them. I never took them off. I just accidentally bent them. So that's when I had to buy another set. But thankfully, they're cheap and they're really, really well made because they're made out of that ACM material. All right, so the inspiration for my livery, it actually came from a guy named Juan Ortega. So when I first discovered him, he had a Mazda Speed 3 that was turquoise blue with clinched flares on it. And he had this same style livery on it. And I'm like, damn, that looks pretty damn sick. I wonder if I can make a replica, but using ScrapeLux rather than clinched. And it worked. So that was my inspiration towards that livery. All right, so inspiration for the diffuser. This goes back to, I believe, 2010, probably 2011. Uh, I went to a car meet, I think the Hella Flush car meet in Santa Monica. And I saw a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful red Honda Accord V6. It was one of the 90s. And it was turboed and it had a wide body on it and it had this massive, like, time attack diffuser. And that's when I fell in love with diffusers. After that, I started seeing them around. And then you could say I started falling in love with them even more once I saw the E30s. And that's basically what made me want to create my own diffuser. But I didn't really pull the trigger until I started modifying the whole truck. That's when I was like, damn, I could start making my own shit. So that's when I decided to make my own diffuser. All right, so my inspiration towards fabrication, that actually came from Engineer to Slide when I discovered him when he did his SR20 DET powered Toyota Hilux. He did a whole space frame, which is goddamn amazing. And hopefully in the future I could replicate something like that. And but yeah, that's basically where the whole tube rear end came. The S13 rear suffering came in. Like, he was a huge inspiration towards this build. My inspiration for wiring actually came from Jimmy Oaks. You guys see him a lot on YouTube, possibly Instagram. So he made a video about creating your own engine harness, which I'm still a little too scared to be touching engine harnesses, even though I was a tech. But it's not about touching it, it's more of creating your own harness from scratch. So I decided to go a level lower and just mess around with body harnesses, slowly creating like small little patches, creating custom switch panels. And then one day I decided to go ahead and attack this and do a full body harness. And as time passed, I did progress on how to loom, how to separate wires, how to make it look professional, like, and the correct uh, wire size, what fuse. So little by little, you start learning things. But in the early 2000s, I still remember seeing like tucked engine harnesses. You won't even see an engine harness or a body harness inside the bay. So that inspired me even more. And then especially now that it's all about tucking, it's all about shaved engine bays. Like, that basically clicked on my mind. Like, dude, let's do this. You want to learn a new trade and become better at it? Do it on your own vehicle. That's why I built this. Like, yeah, I still have a lot of area to learn about, improve. You pretty much see this in person, and I'm like 100% sure you'll be like, damn, like, this could have been done better. But it was my standpoint of, if I don't try on my own thing, I'm never gonna learn, and I'd rather learn on my own thing than mess up somebody else's thing trying to learn. So best thing to do is learn on your own vehicle and improve every single time you do it. So I've done my engine harness at least 3 times already, and at this point I don't have to touch it again. But I am going to touch it only because I'm doing upgrades to the fuel system, and I'm also doing an upgrade to the front end. So there's going to be small changes, and how I said, you just learn, including fabrication. Like, there's small things you're going to learn about this trade, and all I can say is you're going to fail, but there's no success without failure. So if you're willing to try something new and you want to learn, do it. I mean, the worst thing you could do is pop a fuse, pop a relay. If you burn a wire, make sure you have a fire extinguisher right next to you. Like, don't give up. Work on your dreams. The love didn't come in until I started driving it and realizing that there is a scene in trucks. Once I started seeing SD Yoda, Troy Yoda 808, I started seeing the bag minis. Uh, like, it's an endless love for mini trucks. You have Forbidden Fantasy. Like, there's so many truck clubs out there that, like, Severe Ties, that's another one. Like, all these clubs that I looked up to, and I still do, like, the amazing quality that's out there in these trucks and the potential that these trucks have, like, it's pretty damn amazing. Like, no matter how you fix up a truck, each one looks different. For me, newer cars, almost everything looks the same. So for me, a little truck, they're always different no matter how you look at them, because every single truck has to have fabrication, and every fabrication job is different. So it makes every build unique, which, I mean, to me is pretty damn amazing, because you have grassroots builders, you have backyard builders, you have shop builders. Like, there's endless quality and visions that everybody has. So how I said, every truck is unique, no matter whether you built it, a shop built it, but each every little truck has its unique phase, and nobody can really talk down on anybody because everybody does what they could afford, or the vision that they have for their vehicle. You don't know if that was their final thought. So again, each person has their own personality, their own vision. So if they're not up to your spec, let them be. You could show them a certain way, but they might not like it. They might go a different way. So keep in mind when you see other people's builds, like, yeah, it might not be your taste, but let them be. Like, they're in the scene, they're happy. So do you be happy and just enjoy life. There's no reason to be mad at somebody's build. Just focus on yourself. All right, so now it comes down to the last and final reason on my inspiration for on why my truck looks like this and why I do what I do. So one of my biggest idols that I have will be my cousin Chili Willis, and he basically started my love for drifting. He also got me into the love of being a mechanic, and he also taught me the basics of wiring. So this man really, how do I say, he put this great image in my head that I wanted to follow. And I followed those footsteps. I became a technician for Toyota, Nissan, now for Tesla. And he got me into drifting. I'm doing drifting. He taught me about wiring. I did my own body harnesses. So this man has taught me a lot about life, but not only life itself, but vehicles. But I was already in the scene, but he made me grow that much more. And he was a big inspiration for the drift scene, just the learning techniques of automotive. And then one person that inspired me a whole bunch from the very start that I got my first truck, it was my brother-in-law. And Beto, if you're seeing this, dude, thank you. Like, you're a big inspiration when I first got my base truck. You taught me a lot, and all I could say is thank you. Like, you're another big dude that inspired me when I first started. Especially that I got to try out your NK3 Jetta side skirts, and it fit pretty damn well. So thank you to you as well, sir. But yeah, man, like the drift scene, animal style, hurt, hoonigan, like everything is the reason why I'm doing this. Like, I love cars, I love fabrication, I love the drift scene, the wide body, the poke, creating something custom. Like, there's a huge inspiration list. I could go on and on and on. So for those of you asking for inspiration, I'm pretty, I could say from the bottom of my heart that I appreciate all of you guys texting, or not texting, but DMing me, telling me how I'm a big inspiration. I'm really happy I could touch you guys. Like, it means a lot. And if I'm not enough, there's plenty of inspiration out there. You have Nelson Drifts. He drifts a 1UZ mini truck. You have StatFab. He has a 700 horsepower plus JZ truck. I mean, you have Boosted Minis, a whole truck club full of engine sauce with single turbos and twin turbo. You have Chuckles Garage. He has, I believe it's Chuckles Garage, but I only know him as Chuckles. Um, he has the old truck that's compound turbos, and he's been on Hoonigan. He's another big inspiration. Who else? Like how I said, the list goes on. You have inspiration left and right. Whether or not it's trucks, you have a whole different scene. Like, let's say you love lowriders, put some touch of lowrider on these trucks. I've seen a lot of people do engraving. I've seen engraved lips. I've seen engraved tail lights. Like, if you have that certain touch that you want to put on your truck, do it. Like, you don't need a truck inspiration. How I said, you could go anywhere, find inspiration. For me, it was the Euro scene, the drift scene, the technician life. Like, there's literally inspiration everywhere. So, for those of you saying that I'm an inspiration to you guys, that means the world to me, because that means I did something with my life. I didn't let anybody down. And I mean, it's it's a great achievement. And I've had my ups and downs. I've had my bad times with people, but at the end of the day, I mean, you could fix whatever you need to fix. There's really not much more I could say, but to all the bag minis, the turbo minis, the track minis, the show minis, dude, everybody here is a winner. Everybody inspires everybody. So whether you think you're an inspiration or not, there's someone looking up to you. Whether you think you're doing a good job or a bad job. So have fun while you build your own project. Don't stress about life. Enjoy it. And I'm telling you this because from the bottom of my heart, I know everything it is to lose, because I've had a heart attack. I've been close to death 3 or 4 times. I've been in comas. So, like, there's a lot to lose. Enjoy life. I'm trying not to get emotional because I've almost died several times. And yeah, like, just have fun. That's literally all I ask for. And if it's not too much to ask, then dude, do it for yourself. Just live. Be happy what you have. Go out there, cruise your shit. So I think this is it. And I hope you guys enjoy this video. I hope you guys learned something from this, and like, comment, subscribe, and I hope to see you guys in the future.